Okay, let's get back started. You've been called as a witness, Mr. Lane. Go ahead and state your full name.
Thomas Scott Lane.
Thank you. And the clerk's going to swear you in right now.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go ahead, Mr. Wallencheck.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Lane, did you serve as a credentialed legal observer during this election?
Yes.
Are you an attorney, by the way?
I've completed law school, have not taken the bar yet.
Where did you serve? What location did you serve as a credentialed observer?
Maricopa County Tabulation and Election Center.
And how long did you serve as an observer?
I did a graveyard shift from the night of the 10th to the morning of the 11th, about 8 hours, and then I did another shift on the 12th, just for a couple hours.
During those shifts, did you observe duplication of ballots and electronic adjudication of ballots?
Yes.
Did you observe what you believed were mistakes in either one of those processes?
Yes.
Can you please tell the court what you saw in that regard?
Regarding duplication during the graveyard shift, that was the only process being done from the night of the 10th into the morning of the 11th. Two types of mistakes. One, by the teams, the election boards, submitting ballots with mistakes, and we tried to pull as many of those, meaning we made the county workers aware that we witnessed a mistake and they would take note of those ballots and correct them at a later time. Other types of mistakes, which I think the election boards, their mistakes stem from this, is with the software, Novus, N-O-V-U-S 6.0.0.0, the Runbeck software, Runbeck election systems. What that system tries to do is pre-fill the ballot for the team, for that election board. So it takes that scanned image of the ballot, whatever's wrong with it, whether it's a copy stain or it's a braille ballot, a large print, whatever reason that they need to duplicate that ballot, that system, Novus system, tries to pre-fill what it sees. And for at least the first hour and a half of my shift, Trump votes were never pre-filled. And on top of that, in the Senate race, the McSally and Mark Kelly race, no matter who was selected, whether it's McSally or Mark Kelly was always pre-filled. So it was up to the election boards, those teams, to catch those mistakes. Now there's about 15 teams, I want to say, and they're in separate parts of the room, one down a hallway, another row facing one way and a row facing the opposite way. So it's pretty much an exercise in futility, trying to stay on top of all these ballots. And even if I was to run around to see all 15, the ballot's so big that the presidential race is only a certain part of the ballot. So if they're on the second page and they're at the judge's retention, yes or no, then, all hope is lost for me to see whether they submitted that correctly or not.
Thank you. On the days that you were present, or I should say nights that you were present, how many other observers for any party do you believe were present with you?
The graveyard shift, there were 2 Republican observers and 1 Democrat observer, in addition to myself. And then the second shift that I did, the one on the 12th, there was a Democrat observer, and that was it.
And to be clear, that is for all of MCTEC, correct?
Right. That's correct.
When I say MCTEC, MCTEC is the name of the entire tabulation center, right?
That's right.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ariano?
Mr. Lane, you said you witnessed mistakes, but it was unclear what mistakes you actually saw. Would you mind explaining that for me, please?
Sure. So I'm standing behind an observation team, an election board, watching them copy the ballot, duplicate the ballot, and I, not having the ability to speak to them, take a note on my piece of paper, on my notes, or a mental note that, hey, there's a Trump vote on that scanned image, but they either didn't select Trump or they selected someone who wasn't Trump, and they go through the rest of the ballot, and then when they click next, the next ballot, they've confirmed that ballot and it's been submitted. So that's when we call over the county worker and say, hey, the ballot before this one was incorrectly submitted, and then they take a note of the number or the serial number or whatever it is of the current ballot. That way they know, hey, this ballot DUP 294063, the one before that is the one that we have to check at a later point.
And so the county may well have checked that ballot after the fact.
They said they would. I don't know whether they did or not.
Sure, but they certainly made note of it, so far as you could tell.
Yep. Yes.
Did they include the problem?
Can you repeat that, please?
They did not ignore the problem?
In the moment, no, they did not.
Okay. You mentioned that you saw some votes were incorrectly pre-filled in from, for one candidate for another by the software. Did you see whether election workers were able to correct that when they actually, prepared the final ballot?
When you say election workers, are you meaning the election board, those bipartisan teams?
Members of the duplication board.
Mr.
Okay.
Ariana, you got to let him finish before you start talking again, so we have a clear record.
And to clarify, yes, I mean the members of the duplication board.
A lot of the mistakes were corrected.
A lot of the mistakes were corrected?
A lot of mistakes were corrected, meaning the pre-filled ballot was completely wrong. So some teams would go through one by one and manually fill in the bubble. Some teams, along with Quinn, she's part of, I think her badge said the tech staff. She described herself as an administrative assistant. She was a county worker, had a Democrat badge. She's told everyone there that when they were previously working to duplicate ballots, that they just cleared every suggestion because of how bad the software was. So this was an ongoing problem even before my shift.
Understood. And so from what you observed, it sounds like the automatic filling function from the software was a preliminary function of sorts, in that the final corrections could be made by someone who was actually observing the ballot. Is that correct? Or who was actually seeing the ballot that they were duplicating?
Yes, the election board team, not observers, but the bipartisan team.
So when you refer to mistakes in that sense, you're referring to just kind of the initial mislabeling of the machine that was then correctable by the election board or the duplication board?
Both. So even though a lot of the mistakes of the pre-filling were corrected by the election boards, those election teams, there were still mistakes that were made that we had the county workers pull, the ones that we could observe, the ones that we did see.
So are you aware of any mistakes that were made from the pre-filling function that were not corrected?
Yeah.
And remind me what those were.
For the most part, since what we were looking at were the presidential race, the Senate race, and the props, any time that a mistake was made, meaning one bubble was filled for a candidate when the scan image clearly showed a different bubble being filled, we let the election boards, those teams, run through the ballot and, give them a chance to correct it. But once they submit that ballot and move on to the next one, then that's when we alert the county workers and take note of the ballot number that was messed up.
Okay, and let me just focus on the presidential races for a moment. Did you witness any improperly pre-filled in election for a duplicate ballot as to the presidential race that was not corrected?
I'm sorry, I did not understand the last part of
Sure,
that.
I apologize. It was a long-winded question. I'm asking specifically just with respect to the presidential race or the race for presidential electors. Did you see any duplicate ballots where the initial pre-fill had pre-filled in the incorrect candidate on the duplicate ballot, and where that duplicate ballot was not thereafter corrected by the election board?
Yes, I did witness multiple pre-filled errors, and then, sorry, I still did not catch the last part of your question.
Did you catch any pre-fill errors with respect to the presidential contest that were not corrected by the duplication board before they submitted it?
Yes.
How many?
What I witnessed myself, for what I wrote down here on my notes, I have at least 3.
And to your testimony earlier, you said you did flag those ballots for someone in McTech. Is that right?
Yes, they were flagged.
And the election staff made a note specifically of the serial number that followed that problematic ballot so that they could then go back and fix the one that preceded it. Is that right?
Correct. This is asked and answered.
I'm sorry?
Objection was this is asked and answered.
I agree.
You can always.
Mr. Lane, I believe Mr. Willenchuk asked you if you witnessed any mistakes with respect to both duplication boards and adjudication boards, and you said yes, and it was unclear to me if you were referring to both. Did you witness any problems with adjudication boards?
With adjudication, the only time I saw that process was on the 12th when my shift that was only a couple hours long. We had to stand way too far back for me to see whether mistakes were made or not. So when I referred to mistakes being made or what I witnessed, it was for the duplication process.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Desai. We're not getting any sound from you.
Can you hear me now? I was double muted, if possible. Mr. Lane, I only have a couple of questions for you. You just testified that you believe you witnessed some errors that were not corrected after you raised them with the county. Is that a correct summary of your testimony?
I was not present for the correction of the mistakes. All I know is that there was a note made of the serial numbers or whatever the ballot number is called. So I can't say one way or another whether the mistake was corrected or not since I wasn't present for that.
Okay. Did you continue to have concerns because you're here testifying today, so I assume that even after your work as a credentialed observer, you were concerned that those errors may not have been corrected. Is that correct?
Yes. Two concerns that bring me here today. One is the report that of 100 duplicated ballots, there were 2 errors, leads to a 3% swing. The other concern is that if a software as simple as pre-filling what's clear as day, a bubble onto another bubble can be made, a mistake can be made, then what kind of mistakes can be made in a tabulator that's reading, 1,000 ballots a minute? And I have no way of knowing whether a vote is really being read the right way when egregious mistakes were being made right in front of me on this duplication software.
And you're a credentialed observer for the Arizona Republican Party, correct?
I was an observer for no on Prop 207.
Okay. Did you raise these concerns with anybody at the time or in the days following your work as an observer?
Anybody meaning anybody, or anybody meaning someone in power?
Yes. Let me clarify my question. Did you raise your concerns with the Arizona Republican Party?
Nothing in writing, informal conversations with different members of the party and different leaders of the party.
Okay. Did you go contact an attorney to talk to them about your concerns and to bring any claims or concerns that you might have regarding your observations?
I'm object to relevance, and I think the relevance is
Overruled. You can answer.
In the conversation that I had with Jack Willenchek, I'm not sure how long ago or how soon after this happened. Had to be pretty soon after. I did mention it to him.
Okay. And did you file any sort of official complaint with the Maricopa County Elections Department about your concerns?
No.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Liddy, did you have any questions for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly, if I may. Mr. Lane, first, let me just thank you for your service as an observer. We can't have elections in Arizona without it, and I appreciate that. You mentioned in your previous testimony that you took notes on a piece of paper. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Did you share those notes with anybody at the Republican Party?
No.
Did you share those results with anybody for the no on Prop 207?
No.
And you testified that you shared those mistakes with some leaders at the Republican Party. Do you remember that testimony?
Right. So the piece of paper was never shared. The information on the piece of paper was verbally mentioned to different people in the party.
And when was that?
So I would assume it was that morning on the 11th when I got done observing, and then within a few days, at most a week, with Jack Willenchek, attorney.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Willenchek. Redirect.
nothing further. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir, for your time. We appreciate you coming in. Next witness, Willenchek.
I'll call Sherry Beltramo.
Thank you. Are you going to call your handwriting expert, by the way?
It depends how quickly we get through these folks. I'm hoping we can get done today, by the way. I don't know this needs to spill over to tomorrow.
Okay.
I think Sherry should be on the line here. Sherry? Oh, is she calling in? She's calling in. The only thing I do going forward here, Judge, is nobody's invoked the rule here of excluded witnesses, so I can just have the rest of these people call in and just be waiting, you know.
Yeah, I don't want them all at once, but sort of one at a time on deck, I think is fine.
Your Honor, I don't know. I don't think it would be too late to because
people haven't been in the courtroom, the virtual courtroom up until now, but I think we would object to having fact witnesses observing other fact witnesses before they testify. And I'm going to overrule the objection. I think in the interest of making sure we have people on deck and ready to go, I'll allow one witness at a time on a rolling basis.
I apologize here. She was calling in for the probably to that other line for counsel, and I'm just going to give her the toll free. She's saying that she's tried the toll free line. It needs an access code. So is there what number can I give her that she just?
The materials we gave you have an access code, but let me repeat it for you.
I think I have it here, the 975. I'll give that to her.
Correct. It's 975-503-797.
She's saying she tried that. It didn't work.
If you want to try another witness, and you can get this one.
We're going to try that, Your Honor.
Okay. Okay, we've got somebody. Tell me who just joined us. This is Judge Warner.
This is Sherry Beltrama.
Thank you very much. Mr. Willenchuk's calling you as a witness. Raise your right hand and the clerk will swear you in.
Before I swear you in, you might be spelling your last name.
Yes, it's Beltramo, Beltramo.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you do solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, yes.
Go ahead, please, Mr. Willenchuk.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Beltramo, did you serve as a credentialed legal observer for this election?
Yes, sir.
At what location did you serve?
I was at the Maricopa County Tabulation and Election Center.
And what processes there did you observe?
I observed signature verification, ballot separation, and also the adjudication and duplication in the tabulation room.
How long did you observe duplication and adjudication?
I believe over a course of probably 6 days. I served a total of 9. I believe 6 of those for sure. I was in the tabulation room.
So your testimony for 6 days, you observed those two processes?
Yes, I would say a minimum of 6 days.
When you were observing duplication and adjudication, did you see mistakes in either one or both of those processes?
Yes, sir.
Did you see mistakes in both?
I would say in the adjudication, it was more, we were not allowed to interact. I would say there were potentially questions on some of the calls that were made. And then in duplication, there were definitely physical errors where there was misvoting being done.
Let's start with duplication. So what did you observe specifically in terms of mistakes in duplication?
In duplication, I was behind a board, and I noticed that on the original ballot, the voter's intent was Trump, and it was clicked as a Biden vote.
After you saw that, did you take any action?
Yes, sir, I did. I went to one of the county employees there, and his name was Charles, and I, said that, hey, I just noticed that the voter's intent was not captured, or it was captured incorrectly, and what do we do? And he's like, I can go check, and he came and was able to...
I'm just going to object to the extent that some of this testimony seems to be hearsay.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch. Sorry, you guys are all faces on my screen. Is this Ms. Gonski?
This is, sorry, just objecting on the basis of hearsay.
Right, I'm overruling the objection. You can continue.
Okay, thank you. And he came over quickly, and by that time, the team was already on to the next ballot, but he was able to get the number of the previous ballot, and he went over to his main computer and double-checked, and he said, you're right, that did go over incorrectly. And he said, I will just cancel that. And so it cancels in the system, I guess. And he said it kind of doesn't count, and the ballot goes back into the system to be reduplicated.
So taking that instance, when you saw that mistake, how many other observers were present for all parties at MCTEC?
There was one other GOP observer, and then there were 2 Democrat observers.
Could you give me a ratio then for, well, I should be more specific. How many observers were there watching duplication at that time?
So there would have been 4 total.
What would be the ratio then of observer to election board?
Boards. So on that particular night, there was probably, this is going to have to be a little bit of a guess, but I would say there was probably 14 boards.
So if you had to give a ratio, then what would that ratio be?
So there were 4 total observers for 14 boards.
Was that fairly consistent across the 6 days you were present?
No, I would say that actually changed daily, just from the standpoint of they were adding boards based upon kind of the workload sometimes. But I would say it was sometimes more than that. It really never was less than that. And when I'm referring to duplication, that process happened two of the days that I was there, where they were working on duplicating ballots.
You talked about one mistake that you saw. How many other mistakes did you see in duplication?
Honestly, I saw another one right after that. literally within a period of a couple minutes, I had noticed another mistake that was made. And it happened to be where they basically created an overvote. So they had marked 2 candidates for president instead of 1. So it would have canceled out. It would have been an overvote and would have completely canceled it. And I went through the same process. I went to Charles. He confirmed that it had happened that way. He's like, yes, that was a mistake. We'll go ahead and cancel it.
Did you observe any problems with the way the election board teams were working together?
Yes, I mean, after catching those 2 mistakes rather quickly, I mentioned something to the supervisor, Renee, and I just said, there's like multiple mistakes being made here. And it happened to be like an evening shift. So it was a shift that went from 3 until 10:30, approximately that. And basically, one of the workers seemed tired, and I said, like, I don't know if they need a break to step away, but we have to, make sure that the voter's intent is being captured here. And then some pairs of would discuss out loud as they were going over the ballot, and this particular team was not really saying much. And so Renee spoke to them and said, like, you need to be talking out loud so that you know what the other person is doing and we're catching any errors.
So we've just talked about duplicating ballots. For adjudication of ballots, can you explain to us how the teams there operate? And how is it different than how the duplication teams operate?
Yes, there's basically, when we were looking, like observing the board, adjudication has 2 side-by-side ballots. So one is the intent and or what the computer guesses to be the intent. And then on the right side is what they are clicking to send as a confirmed intent of the voter. And then in duplication, there were 2 separate types. There's one where the ballots are side by side on the screen. And again, on the left side is kind of the voter's intent, and then on the right is what will be actually sent in. And then there's a third type where the overseas ballots are pretty much an 8.5 by 11 sheet, so the ballot is substantially shrunk down. And in that area, one person is reading off the ballot that's in hand, and then the other person is clicking on the screen, on the computer screen, on what will be submitted.
So in both the duplication and adjudication processes, you observed human beings making the decisions on how the vote would be counted, right?
Yes, correct. And I would say human beings, and then there is the machine has guessed in certain areas and tried to kind of the machine came up with like a default of what it was guessing, and then the adjudication team or the duplication team would kind of go from there.
Did you observe mistakes in what the software was guessing?
That would be difficult for me to say if it was a mistake or not, because I don't know like what the intent of the voter was. So there were probably definitely times when I would say what I saw the machine guessing as its intent and what I would say the voter's intent was did not match.
And where you stood observing, were you able to see any originals for adjudication, any original copies of original ballots?
No, sir. Everything was on the screen.
Were the teams reviewing originals?
No.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Konski, you're going to go first?
I have no questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Tsai? Sorry, I can't hear you, but you shook your head, no questions. Thank you. Mr. Liddy?
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for your time. We're going to excuse you now.
Thank you, sir.
It looks like we've got a witness on deck, Mr. Ronchek. Tell me who it is.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ken Sampson.
Are you on the line, sir?
Yes, I am, Your Honor.
Thank you. Will you state your name and spell it for the clerk?
Yes, my name is Kenneth Sampson, Kenneth, Sampson, Sampson.
Thank you. The clerk's going to swear you in now.
Can you please raise your right hand?
Mm-hmm.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Ronchek.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Sampson, did you serve as a credentialed legal observer for this election?
Yes, I did.
And at what location did you serve?
I served at the Maricopa County Tabulation and Election Center. Some people call it the MCTEC.
How long were you there for?
I was there on 2 occasions. I was there on election evening, observing some data card transfers, and I was also there the evening, I believe, of the 3rd of November.
Are you a lawyer, by the way?
I am.
Are you licensed?
I am.
In Arizona?
No, I'm not.
Okay. What did you observe? Let me back up. What processes did you observe?
I'm sorry, on which occasion?
On both occasions.
On both occasions, on the first I observed was on election evening when individuals were bringing in the results from the tabulation machines from the voting centers, and they were all on little data cards, and they were stacking data cards, scanning them into the larger server, and then basically making a compilation of those votes, then pushing them out to a larger server for people to see the results.
Did you observe the processes of duplication and electronic adjudication of ballots?
I did.
Did you observe mistakes in either one or both of those processes?
Well, on the data cards, I wouldn't be able to determine if there was any mistakes from where we were sitting and the way that they were conducting their tabulations from those machines. It was all from notations that were made, and all of them looked like they were accounted for from where we were watching what they were tracking. As far as the duplication and the adjudication, I saw several procedural errors as well as physical errors made by the poll workers there.
Can you tell us specifically about the errors you observed in duplication?
Absolutely. In the duplication process, there's basically two ballots. One that's been rejected by the tabulation machine, and then a blank, ballot for reconstructing whatever was on the rejected ballot. and there were multiple instances where I saw individuals that were incorrectly inputting votes from the rejected ballot onto the new duplicated or reconstituted ballot. And then I also observed individuals attempting to follow what was going on with the software in order to mark those ballots correctly.
Did you observe the software pre-filling answers, pre-filling guesses?
I did. On one side, the left side was the rejected ballot, and then on the right side was the one that was the ballot to be duplicated. And the software would put little green squares where they thought the original rejected ballot was going to vote, I guess, to help aid in the workers marking it. However, across the board, I saw that those were wholly inaccurate. I spent a good amount of time walking from computer to computer, looking over the workers' shoulders, and they weren't even close. And so I don't know if that was a suggestion in part, but the software was not reading the suggested votes correctly.
When you were present as an observer, how many other observers were there total at MCTEC?
Including myself, there were 2 Republican observers and 2 Democratic observers. If you were to give a ratio for how many observers, let me back up. How many observers were there present observing the duplication process with you? That would have been the 2 Republican and the 2 Democratic. If you were to give a ratio of how many observers to election duplication board teams, what would that ratio be? I would put it approximately, if we're talking teams, probably about 1 to 6, 1 to 7. But that would be. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, I was saying Go ahead. To clarify, if I was to say that there were 4 observers the entire time, I'm mentally counting tables, but there would be, for each one observer, there would be about 6 to 7 stations to observe. As a team, that would be half of that. So about 1 team for every maybe 10 to 15 tables. Okay. No further questions.
Thank you. Who's going to question this witness from defendants?
No questions from us, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Desai?
Nothing, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Liddy?
Briefly, Your Honor. Mr. Sampson, you mentioned that you were able to walk up and down and view several different screens. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell me approximately how many different screens you were able to observe while you were there?
At a given time, or the entire time that I was there?
The entire time you were there.
All of them.
Well, how many is all of them? Approximately.
Well, it's approximately computer screens. That would have been about 15, I believe.
Thank you. No more questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Wolenchek, redirect.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Who's next, Mr. Wolenchek?
Should have Lori Gray.
Just a quick question, housekeeping while we're waiting for her to join. We have 2 Lori Grays on the witness list, and I was just wondering if those were the same person. So if this is Lori Gray, L-O-R-I, or L-A-U-R-I-E. I know one of them submitted a declaration, the other didn't, so I want to see which one is here.
L-O-R-I.
Okay, thank you.
They are different people?
All I can tell you is I'm calling Lori Gray with an L-O-R-I, and I think she just joined, hopefully.
Yes, this is Lori Gray.
Thank you very much. This is Judge Warner speaking. Is Gray spelled with an E or an A?
A, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lori is spelled L-O-R-I?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Right. The clerk's going to swear you in now.
Okay.
Please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Willenship?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Gray, did you serve as a credentialed legal observer during the selection?
Yes.
And where did you serve as an observer?
At MC Tech, the tabulation facility for Maricopa County.
What processes did you observe there?
So during the days and shifts that I was there, I floated between the observing in the signature curing or signature verification room offices and the tabulation room where they also did adjudication and duplication.
I apologize if you already stated this, but how many days did you spend at MCTEC?
I'm thinking I was a total of 7 days.
And did you observe duplication and adjudication for all 7 days?
No, I observed duplication for the majority of those days. But during that duplication process, there was adjudicating being done towards the end during the duplication, meaning the teams that were working on duplications, at times they had to decide whether or not decide the intent of the voter. So there was adjudication happening at the duplication board.
During your time, did you observe issues or mistakes in duplication or adjudication?
Yes.
What did you observe?
I observed multiple incidences when the teams would duplicate a ballot and they would continue on, and it looks as though they should have went back and corrected, double checked. I saw multiple times where they marked Biden for a ballot that said Trump on the original, or there were instances where I saw because that second ballot had some ovals filled in already. I don't know why. It seems like it should have been blank, but it wasn't. Sometimes they missed removing an oval, which caused an overvote at times. And I also saw during a process when they were adjudicating, they would have to decide what the intent of the voter was. For example, if the first option is President Trump, if there was an X in that box, but it was also filled in as an oval, I saw it decided that the voter intended to not vote for that particular race because there was not another option chosen. And so it was counted as a no vote for the presidential race. I saw that several times.
Based on your observations, was there more electronic adjudication of ballots being done than duplication?
No, not during the duplication process. It was mostly all duplication that I observed. But I did see, like I said, during the last few days of counting and duplicating, it was mostly there were 2 days where the staff of the Maricopa County employees were doing the duplicating. That's when I saw a lot of the adjudication happening at the same time. And so for the most part, they were duplicating, but I saw adjudication happening because they had to determine the intent of the voter to duplicate it.
I appreciate that, and I phrased my question poorly. I'm just trying to get a sense of the magnitude of. But let me ask it this way: how many teams or boards were performing adjudication as compared to duplication?
Oh, on the days that, well, like I said, I showed up. I think I started working observing on election day, and so on that day that's on the other side of the room. I didn't go over there. I didn't work over there that day. Are you asking me in general, or while I was observing the duplication that had adjudication happening also? Is that what you're? I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
And I'm asking in general, just the size of the two operations. How many teams were performing?
Well, it would vary anywhere from maybe 16 to 20 teams. There were 20. Wait, there were 6, 12, or 15 teams that they would have set up. I didn't count those stations. I can see them in my head, but I didn't count the stations for duplication. Part of the majority of the boards for duplication were behind a wall in the center, so two observers would have to just, and they were double-sided. So it was 2, 4, 6, 8. There were about 20, I guess, duplication. Adjudication maybe about the same number, but that was across the room, and I didn't do any adjudication observations separately. It was I watched all duplication and witnessed adjudication during that because they had to determine the intent of the voter.
I appreciate that. No further questions.
Thank you. Who's going for defendants? Ms. Konski?
Thank you, Your Honor. This is Sarah Gothiel. I'll ask you some questions. Thanks for being here today. I just have a few questions for you. So one is that you mentioned that you saw some errors being made during the duplication process. Is that right?
Yes.
And how many errors did you see?
Well, unfortunately, at the times of this happening, I didn't mark or hashtag errors that I caught. The most of the time I was focusing on waving down the supervisor to come and catch it, which most of them were not caught because if the workers were done with that ballot, it was gone. And unless I wrote down the ballot numbers, which I couldn't see because I was too far away, they couldn't bring it back up. Not that they wouldn't, they just couldn't. So when I started counting, I counted. When I started paying attention to the count of what I would catch, I had got only up to 11 instances, but that was over the last two or three days that I could count.
Okay, so there's kind of a lot there, so I'm going to go back and just break it up and ask you a couple follow-up questions if that's okay. Sure. Okay. So one is, so first of all, just to clarify, when I'm asking about errors, I'm specifically asking about what's at issue in this case is errors in the presidential race. Were you able to see whether there were errors in the presidential race?
Yes, and they were the easiest to see if you walked by at the same time because they were at the top of the, they were the first thing you could see.
Okay. And so you actually reported these errors to election workers when you saw them. Isn't that right?
Whenever it was possible, yes.
And then they actually reviewed the errors once you reported them. Is that correct?
No. The only time that they could review them is if the board was still up. If that ballot was still up, then they could review it. Or I found out afterwards if I was able to get the ballot number that they were working on. Because once they hit that button and sent that ballot off, it was gone. They couldn't retrieve. I guess it was random. I don't know. They couldn't retrieve it. So there were instances where I saw something and then we'll go and get a supervisor because there's one or two supervisors and there's one or two observers. So we're just walking. So it's like, okay, because we can't speak to the workers. So we'd have to flag down the supervisor. Everybody was nice, don't get me wrong, but if they couldn't get over there in time, the ballot was gone because I couldn't tell them, don't send that ballot. There's a mistake. I couldn't say anything to the workers. So it was only 2 instances where we were able to catch it that I remember.
Okay, so there are, just to make this a little bit, make sure that I'm understanding. So when you saw an error, then you would flag down, you would make an attempt to flag down a supervisor. Is that right?
Yeah, yes.
And then do you have any training on what the supervisors do or what the supervisor's process is if somebody flags a potential error to them? Did you receive any training or instructions on that?
No, the only instructions that I received when I got there was that if we saw anything that looked like an error or problems, just to get the supervisor. And and that did happen, and they came and they went over the ballot and they caught the mistake, no big deal, and they corrected it and went to the next ballot.
Great, thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, Ms. Yost?
Hello?
No questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. And then Mr. Liddy. Let me just say, if you're waiting to testify and it's not your turn, please mute yourself. Mr. Liddy, do you have questions of Ms. Gray?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Gray, you testified earlier that you were able to float around to different rooms. Do you remember that testimony?
Yeah.
And you know how many rooms, or can you approximate how many rooms for me?
I can tell you exactly. There were 2 rooms that we were told is where the work was being done to cure the ballots, meaning calling voters to let them know or to get the information they needed to cure their ballot. And there were 2 offices of that. Then there was a large room in the back where they were separating the ballots from the envelope. However, I didn't spend a lot of time in there because you couldn't see anything. We were so far away from everyone. We had to stay in this 4x6 area. I just decided not to spend time in there because I couldn't see anything. So I just stayed in those 2 offices, or I was in the duplication room.
And one more question. I think you testified that you served as an observer for 7 days. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you for your service. No more questions, Your Honor.
Redirect, please.
Nothing further. Thank you.
It's great. Thank you very much for your time. We're going to let you go now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Who's next, Mr. Wolenchek?
Your Honor, I have one more observer, and then I'll call the handwriting expert, and then we're going to rest. So the next is Jan Bryant.
Jan Bryant, are you there?
I am.
Thank you. Will you spell your name for me?
My full name is Janice, Janese, Bryant, Bryant.
Thank you. This is Judge Warner speaking, by the way, and the clerk's going to swear you in now.
Thank you.
Okay, please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Wolenchek.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Bryant, did you serve as a credentialed legal observer for this election?
I did.
Where did you serve?
I served a couple of very short shifts at 2 polling places, but then I spent 6 shifts at the ballot tabulation center.
Meaning MCTEC, right?
Yes.
Did you observe ballot duplication and adjudication at MCTEC?
Yes.
Did you observe mistakes in those processes?
I did see minor mistakes. I did not see the process that we had, because there was only 2 or at times 3 of us in there walking around. You're really just walking past boards most of the time, so you don't get a lot of chance to speak. And then in some cases, you're far enough away that you can't see if there was a mistake made. On the duplication boards, we could see if there was a mistake. I did not see mistakes. I did see one instance where there was a weird triplication of the printed copy of the ballots that were being duplicated, a single ballot, and then at that same station earlier that same day, a separate ballot with a printed copy, all in one stack. So those were biggest mistakes that I saw.
How many days did you spend observing at Mid-Tech?
I was in the ballot tabulation center, so actually in the big glass room, 5 days, and 1 day in the ballot separation room.
And for the days that you were there, could you estimate how many observers were present with you on any given day?
Most days there were 2 Democrat and 2 Republican observers. Some days we had a third person just observing one of the Prop 207 data. And then we would also have, that would be just in the ballot tabulation center, the big room with all the monitors. And then we would also have potentially 1 or 2 other people in one of the signature verification rooms or in the ballot separation room.
On any given day, how many county workers would be doing duplication?
It depended. Early, there were just maybe 4 or 6 doing duplication. And then later, in some of the later shifts that I had, they had set up a whole other area, and there's sets of 2. So when I say 4 or 6, that would be 2 boards were set up with people. And so then, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, 11, 12, maybe 12 sets of people.
That's for duplication?
Just for duplication. And then adjudication is a whole separate. There were 23 stations for adjudication.
So is it fair to say towards the end there's about 20 to 30 people performing both, 20, 30 people each for each function? Did I get that right?
For the adjudication, there would be 46 people if all the boards were full, which they usually were. And then for duplication, I'm trying to remember, 3, and I forgot what I didn't write down what I was just counting. So 9, 10, 11, 12, so about 24 maybe people doing just duplication when they were all the stations were full.
Right. Okay. No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. It's going to be Ms. Gonski.
It's going to be me, Your Honor, but we have questions.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Sorry, it was going to be me to ask questions. We have no questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Yost, are you going to ask questions?
No questions.
Thank you. And Mr. Liddy?
No questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Folks, we're going to take a break now. I need to give my staff regular breaks. They're working hard and need a rest. So we're going to break for 15 minutes, and then we'll come back after that. And I want to have a brief conversation about what's next and when we think we finish up, just for scheduling purposes. So let's see you in 15 minutes. We're in recess. All right, we're going back on the record. Civil 2020-015285. A moment for everybody to gather. Okay. Mr. Wolencheck, your next witness, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll take Linda Brickman if she's on the line. I'm not clear right now.
Yes, sir. I'm here. This is Linda.
Thank you, ma'am. This is Judge Warner speaking. Will you just spell your name?
Yes, Linda, Linda. Last name Brickman, Brickman.
Thank you. The clerk's going to swear you in right now.
Thank you.
Okay, please raise your right hand.
Yes.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right. Ms. Wolencheck, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Brickman, did you serve as a paid poll worker for this election?
Yes, I did. Temporary.
And where did you work at?
MECTEC, which is the Maricopa County Elections and Tabulation Center.
In what capacity or capacities did you work there?
I worked both in all the rooms almost, the signature verification room, duplication room, adjudication room, the ABC room, and the hand count audit room just after the election.
With respect to, I'm sorry, you testified that you worked in both adjudication and duplication, correct?
Yes, sir.
With respect to adjudication and duplication, did you observe mistakes or errors?
Quite a few, sir.
Can you please tell us what you observed?
In the duplication room specifically, I observed with my Democratic partner the preparation of a new ballot since the original ones may have been soiled, damaged, or ripped or wouldn't go through the tabulator. I read her a Trump ballot. As soon as she entered it into the system, the ballot defaulted on the screen to a Biden/Democratic ballot. Reported this to the supervisors and others in the room that commented they had witnessed the very same manipulation. We were told what, if any, actions would be taken. As a matter of fact, we were never told, we were never told what corrections would be made. That was number one. One of the most egregious incidents that I saw both in duplication and the adjudication room, which I worked, I observed the problem of Trump votes with voters checking the bubble for a vote for Trump, but also writing in the name Donald Trump and checking the bubble next to his handwritten name again as a duplicate vote, counting as an overvote, which means that no vote would be counted at all, despite the policy having been changed to allow these overvotes to be counted. Supervisors contradicted their own policies where the intent was clear. Ray Valenzuela, director of elections, had told me openly the morning of the Dominion certification on November 18th that this was incorrect. The supervisors were terribly mistaken. And as an adjudicator...
Hearsay. So what Mr. Valenzuela told her?
Overruling the objection. Continue, please.
Okay, and as an adjudicator, I was instructed incorrectly, and these many votes should have been counted and not turned away as an overvote. And then the next day, for whatever it was worth, I was reprimanded by my own supervisor where I was working in signature verification and was told that I had to suppress my feelings and my thoughts and exactly what was seen, that as long as I was working there, I was just going to be staying in a different room and I could be doing things, but not around other people, so I wouldn't have to damage the integrity of what they would consider their voting, which I thought was wrong, but those are my feelings.
How much training did you receive to do adjudication?
I had been doing adjudication in the primary as well for this year, so I had already known what to do. Prior to that, I'd been working in adjudication for maybe a year or so before then, and the training that we all received was maybe an hour of training, if that.
With respect to duplication, did you receive that same training 1 hour, or was it an additional hour? What did you receive with respect to duplication?
It was pretty much training on the job. We were told that we were trying to be set up with a partner, whether one was a Democrat or Republican. We were pretty much trained by the partner that we were working with if we had been trained, and we kind of learned as we went along. We would ask questions as we would go along. If, a supervisor or an inspector was standing behind us, but for the most part, there was not a lot of training at all given to us.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Who's questioning for defendant?
I am, Your Honor. Excuse me. Ms. Brickman, I have a question with respect to the errors you said you were seeing in the duplication room. It was a little unclear. Were you yourself working as a member of the duplication board?
Well, I was working with a partner. I had been asked to work as part of the board. There were, I think, 10 machines, 8 or 10 machines, and I was working at one of the machines with a partner of the opposite party.
Okay, so you were
Yes.
So you were responsible for duplicating ballots together with the partner.
Yes.
Okay, and so when you saw the software indicate a vote for one candidate as a vote for another candidate on the duplicated ballot, that's the mistake you're talking about, right?
That's one of them, yes.
But as a member of the duplication board, you would have had an opportunity to correct that problem, would you not?
Yes, we did.
And did you correct the mislabeling?
Yes, we did.
Okay, so did any ballots get counted that you saw? Did any ballots get counted differently from what the voter had originally indicated on the original ballot?
Yes, they did.
Which ones?
There were mostly all ballots that I had seen with my partner, that if they came across with a vote for the Republican candidate, it would be changed automatically on the screen to a Democratic candidate. Primarily, it was Biden.
Right, but I understood you to testify earlier that you, as a member of the duplication board, as a worker, had the chance to correct that mistake. Did you not?
We did, but the machine didn't calculate it correctly.
What do you mean?
So whatever it didn't put it in the machine. I mean, both my partner and I would push the button at the very end before you skip to the next ballot, and it was supposed to calculate whether it would be a Democrat or a Republican person, or sometimes if it was a nonpartisan office, you would push the button and it would just correct to that name that we would put in, or that was duplicated. It did not always stick in the machine. I mean, it would revert back to the original ballot where the correct mistakes were made, or it would switch over to a Democratic ballot. So our changes were not kept in the machine.
And I'm unclear. Explain to me what you mean by it calculated it differently. These weren't tallying machines, right?
No, they were actual ballots. The actual ballot from the individual, such as yourself, if you were voting, your ballot would be on the left side of the machine, and a supposed blank ballot would be on the right side of that same, viewing machine. And we would move the votes from the left to the right.
Okay, but you had a chance review the ballot as it was supposed to be duplicated before it was submitted, did you not?
That's correct, but the machine would not calculate the changes that we made. It would not tabulate, whatever word you want to use, calculate, tabulate. It would not move those same names that the voter, not we, that the voter had wanted. So it wouldn't stay in the machine. So no matter what changes we made, the machine would not tabulate it correctly.
Okay, and did you report this issue to anyone?
Oh, I reported it to a number of people, and that's why I got yelled at. And I reported to the supervisors. My Democratic partner was in hysterics. She said that she never would have believed, unless she had seen it with her own eyes, that there were such incredulous problems with the machine that she would never have believed it if she hadn't seen it. I got yelled at the next day by my own supervisor saying that I understand you caused problems over in the duplication room because you're trying to say that our machines weren't working. I said, well, I wasn't trying to cause problems. I was only telling the truth. Your machines are not working. No, I can't say. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, we can't see the software. We can only see what is put right in front of us on a screen. The same thing as when I was working in the Dominion software trying to go ahead and certify off. I signed off as certification denied because I did not want to certify something that I could not see. Those machines were not working correctly that day of testing. Same things happened.
Okay, Ms. Brickman, just to be clear, you have not been asked by Mr. Willenchuk about Dominion systems. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question. I heard my name, but I didn't hear that question.
Mr. Willenchuk you have not been asked to testify today about Dominion systems. Is that correct?
No.
And the systems you were working...
I'm just bringing up the same issue that happened at testing, and that's why I could verify that the machines were not working correctly.
When you say machines, what are you referring to specifically?
The Dominion software / machines.
Okay, but when it comes to ballot duplication, those were not Dominion systems, were they?
As far as we know, we were told they were all the Dominion software. It was all the same machines, the same software. Why would it be different from one day to the next?
Who told you it was all the same software?
We were told by the people who worked in there.
By who?
By Ray Valenzuela, by anybody, Scott Jarrett, anybody who was working in there in the machines, that these were all the exact same software that was used at the elections. Why would it have changed?
Okay, so you personally have no basis to know what the difference is between a Dominion system and the software you were using for ballot duplication. Is that right?
Well, I guess we'd all like to know if it was the exact same, wouldn't we?
Okay. And did you receive any training on the software you were specifically using for ballot duplication?
Same training, maybe an hour or so, if that, but we were trained on the job as we were working on the machine.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Yost or Mr. Stein?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Liddy?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Brickman, do you remember the name of your Democratic counterpart with whom you shared so much time and you witnessed in hysterics?
I can't remember. I believe her first name was Candace, but I'm sure it could be on the record because we all had to sign in and sign out, so I don't want to say and incorrectly mention her name. So, no, I don't offhand remember.
And you testified that you're a temporary worker. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you were working on ballot duplication?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever seen a ballot duplication machine tabulate a vote?
I've seen it calculated on the machine. Yes, I have worked in there before, yes.
Have you ever seen a ballot duplication machine tabulate a vote? The yes or no answer, please.
If you're asking me to bring up numbers, no. But I've seen it tabulate a correct or a wrong answer on the machine because that's what we were there to do.
Okay, so I want to make sure that the record clearly reflects your response to my question. Have you ever seen a ballot duplication machine tabulate a vote?
I'm just going to check the form as to tabulate, as to what Mr. Liddy intends by the word tabulate.
Will you explain to her what you mean by tabulate, Mr. Liddy? I'll sustain the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. In Maricopa County, we have tabulation machines. And this witness has testified that she was a temporary worker at McTech, where they have central tabulation machines. They tabulate the votes. They count the votes. Now, this witness has testified that she was working on ballot duplication, which duplicates the ballot. They cannot be read by a tabulate machine. Yet she has testified that the duplication machine
hold on.
accurately
I'm not asking for your argument. I was asking you to explain to the witness what you mean by tabulation machine, and I think you just did that. So go ahead and ask the question.
I worked on a duplication machine, period. That's what they were called, as duplication machines.
Thank you, Ms. Brickman. And in your experience as a temporary worker at McTech during the election, have you ever witnessed a duplication machine tabulate votes?
Yes, for those machines, yes. For the duplication machines, yes.
Okay. And have you ever seen a duplication machine count votes?
No.
And
I don't think I understand the question, but no.
Okay.
They don't count votes. They tabulate what is on someone's ballot, your ballot, for instance, and all we do is we're moving those votes to another ballot right next to on the machine. It doesn't tabulate a number vote. It tabulates a person's name and a vote.
Okay, thank you. So if I understand your testimony clearly, your testimony is that you have never seen a ballot duplication machine incorrectly count a ballot. Is that correct?
They don't count.
Thank you.
Correct. They do not count.
Okay, let me see if I have any other questions here. I think you testified that there was a ballot that you observed that was marked for Trump and that also was marked as a write-in for Trump. Was that your testimony?
Yes, sir.
And I think it was also your testimony that when that ballot was placed in the McTech central tabulation machine, it failed to count that vote. Is that correct?
Well, you're not stating it exactly the way it happened. Again, it's on the same type of machine. It's on a duplication machine. You have the ballot, the exact ballot from the voter on the left. You have the plain or the blank ballot on the right. And when we put the machine through, or you just push a button that says accept or deny, it changed back to the original ballot the way the voter wanted, or in some cases it wasn't even the way the voter wanted it. When we pushed the clear button or to pass through, it would come across as a Democratic vote, not as the way the voter wanted it.
Okay, so now again, you're talking about the ballot duplication machine. Am I correct?
Yes.
And as
well as adjudication. Adjudication was the same kind of room.
Please let me ask the question before you start the response. So you testified that you saw a ballot that was marked the oval darkened for Trump and the oval darkened for write-in, and the voter had written in Trump, go into the ballot duplication machine and come out as an overvote. Was that your testimony?
Yes. Yes.
Now, did you witness that ballot go to the adjudication board?
We got it at the adjudication board. I was in there. I was part of that board, so yes, I did see it, and I witnessed it because I was the one doing it.
And did the adjudication board adjudicate that as an enthusiastic Trump vote?
We never voiced an opinion. We never voiced an
Hold on, don't answer the question. Mr. Liddy, please rephrase your question.
Did the adjudication board examine the ballot that was marked with an oval for Donald Trump and an oval for write-in which there was handwritten in Donald Trump? Did the adjudication board adjudicate that as a vote for Donald Trump?
We tried to. Excuse me. We tried to. It would not go through.
And when
the supervisors kicked it out.
So there was a supervisor who came and kicked it out?
Then when I say we, my partner and I, couldn't agree or didn't agree on something,
okay.
Or we weren't sure about something, yes, the supervisor behind us could come by and say, well, if there's an issue here, both of you do not agree, we can make a decision.
Okay, I understand that. Thank you very much. That clarifies it. So it was taken out of your hands, and it was your understanding that that ballot was taken somewhere else where they could discern the intent of the voter?
They said in the machine it was an overvote. No one took it out of our hands. It was an overvote on the machine itself.
Correct. And did anyone inform you that an overvote on the machine that is marked Trump and marked write-in for Trump would be evaluated in the future as a Trump vote?
No, we were told that any overvote would be considered null and void, and it would not count as a vote.
By the machine?
By anyone who viewed the machine, a supervisor, the machine, anybody. Once it was in the machine, we were told ahead of time you're only supposed to vote for one person, and we voted for one person, or the voter, I should say, voted for one person. That one particular section of the ballot would be kicked out if there was more than one vote, and that's what happened.
So it's your testimony that none of your supervisors ever told you that an overvote, that's a Trump vote with the oval filled in, and a Trump vote with the oval filled in as write-in and written out Trump, would in the future be evaluated as a Trump vote, not by the machine, but by a human adjudication board. Have you ever been informed of that by any supervisor while you were serving at Maricopa County McTech as a temporary employee?
We were told whether it was a Trump vote, Biden vote, Mickey Mouse vote, wouldn't make any difference, that anybody who had a duplicate vote would not be counted. It was considered an overvote, and an overvote would not be counted, even if both votes were for the same individual.
Do you remember the name of the supervisor who told you that?
There were numerous ones in there. I don't remember the name of the young lady that was passing by behind us.
Thank you very much.
She was an independent.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Redirect, Mr. Willenchik.
Nothing further, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for your time, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. Let's pause for a moment and talk about what's left. Mr. Willenchik, you're going to call your handwriting person?
Yes, sir. I expect that will be short, hopefully 5-10 minutes, and then we'll rest.
All right. Assuming that happens, are other people going to be calling witnesses?
Your Honor, this is Mr. Lee from Maricopa County. I intend to call Ray Valenzuela, who will testify in some detail about the process Maricopa County uses to do signature verification.
All right. And then Ms. Desai, do you anticipate other witnesses?
Your Honor, if the court is willing to entertain a motion for directed verdict after the plaintiff closed their case, we believe that they will, based on what we've heard so far, that would be appropriate. There's also a question about whether or not the numbers support any sort of shift in the outcome of the presidential race. So if the court's going to entertain that, we will make that motion. If not, we will call Bo Dole as the election inspector as our own.
Okay. I generally don't in bench trials because I don't think the rule calls for it. But I suppose it's a conversation we can have when the time comes. And then Mr. Spiva has unmuted. Yeah, what's your plan?
Yeah, yes, Your Honor. We also wanted to move for a directed verdict at the close of plaintiff's case, and then we have our expert, but at this point, I think we would need to call him tomorrow, Your Honor.
Really, what I was trying to figure out is if we're finishing tonight or tomorrow. So we're not going to finish tonight. I thought it was a possibility, but as I'm looking at it, I don't want to push it too hard. But I think we'll finish up tomorrow morning. So let's go ahead and get Mr. Wilczyk's expert, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'll call Lori Holtzel to the stand.
And is she here?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. This is Judge Warner speaking. Please spell your name.
Yes, Your Honor. Lori, Laurie, Holtzel, HOELTZEL.
Okay. Let's get you sworn in.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Wilczyk.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Holtzel, can you please tell the court what you do for a living?
Yes, I'm a forensic document examiner.
And what are your qualifications to be a forensic document examiner?
Yes, sir. I have over 20 years of experience in forensic document examination. I completed a 4-year training program that was completed in 2004, and I have been doing forensic document examination solely since 2007.
Were you present for the court-ordered examination of mail-in signed ballots on Tuesday?
Yes, sir.
And did you perform a handwriting analysis on 100 mail-in signed affidavits?
Mail-in signed, I believe, envelopes if they're affidavits. Yes, sir, I did.
Did you determine that any of the 100 any of the 100 signatures were inconclusive as a match to the voter's signature?
There were 6 that I was unable to make a determination on that were inconclusive.
Now, when you say inconclusive, does that mean that the signature was invalid?
No, sir. It's simply I did not have enough comparison exemplars to make a determination either way.
As a professional document examiner, do you believe you need a certain number of exemplars in order to say a signature is a conclusive match?
Ideally, yes. Ideally, I'd like a minimum of 7 to 10, although there are many cases that there is only one signature. Some cases I can move forward with that, and others I'm just unable to move forward because I do not have a large enough subset to make a determination.
And when you were present analyzing signatures, was there also an expert present for the defendants?
Yes, sir.
And was Ray Valenzuela also present for the county?
Yes.
Was Mr. Valenzuela identifying his conclusions for the signatures in your presence?
Yes, sir.
And to say that more simply, was he saying whether or not he felt each signature was a match?
Yes, he was.
Did Mr. Valenzuela identify any signature out of 100 as being inconclusive or not a match?
No, he did not.
And with respect to defendant's expert, did defendant's expert also announce his findings on the spot?
Yes, sir.
And did he identify inconclusive signatures?
Yes, he did.
I mean, I can ask, could you approximate how many?
He had 11 inconclusives, although once we had finished going through the 100 signatures, there were quite a few signatures that I wanted to review again. This is when we realized that the software for the program was able to enlarge the signature on the ballot envelope, and I believe he changed I can't remember exactly, but I believe he at least changed 2 of his inconclusives to yes.
So to summarize, you found 6 inconclusives. The defendant's expert found around, 8 to 11 based on his statements, and Mr. Valenzuela found none, correct?
Correct.
Did you notice that Mr. Valenzuela's conclusions were you felt he was reaching them quickly or slowly, or how was he reaching his conclusions? How quickly?
He was definitely quicker than I was reaching my conclusion or the other document examiner was reaching his conclusion.
If Mr. Valenzuela's process is representative of the county, well, let me restate that. Do you feel Mr. Valenzuela's process met professional standards?
I'm not quite sure what the process is.
Lack of foundation.
Let me see who the objection came from, Mr. Spiva.
Yes, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the objection. If she wants to testify that it's not what a document examiner would do, she's got foundation to make that testimony.
Sure. Ma'am, would a forensic document examiner certify signatures as a match in the absence of sufficient signatures on file?
No.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Spiva, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Holtzell. You submitted a CV in this case, is that correct?
A CV? Yes, sir.
And I believe that's been marked for the court as Plaintiff's Exhibit 15. Ms. Holtzell, on the CV, you hold yourself out as a PhD, do you not?
Candidate, sir.
Well, it says PhD-C. Is it your testimony that the C stands for candidate?
Yes, sir.
Is that something that you've seen used in academic circles or real world circles where people use the letter C to mean candidate?
Yes, sir.
And you do not have a PhD, is that right?
Correct, sir.
And you've been called out by a court before for holding yourself out as a PhD, have you not?
I've always been not always, but I've been a candidate. I have not completed my dissertation yet. So if they called out, I guess they were calling out the candidate. I don't recall that case specifically.
You've held yourself out as Dr. Lori Holtzell before, have you not?
It was always with a candidate. I've always been, when I've started using PhD, it's always been with the candidate.
Did you testify in a case called Sunnyside Group v. Jong KUK Lee in California Superior Court?
I don't recall, sir.
Were you aware that the court questioned your use of the PhD-C designation to refer to yourself?
I was not.
Where are you studying to get your PhD?
Barron University.
And have you completed the coursework for a PhD?
I've completed the coursework, yes, sir.
Okay. And have you also held yourself out as having expertise in the areas of psychoneurology, Amazonian herbology, angel readings, swish patterns, and Ericksonian therapeutic hypnotic metaphors?
For psychoneurology, that is what the doctoral candidate is for.
You're studying for your PhD in psychoneurology?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're not studying for a PhD in forensic document examination, I take it?
No, sir.
Were you aware that the court in Sunnyside Group v. Jong Kook Lee said that your substantive testimony was not very persuasive either?
I was not aware of that, no, sir.
And this is an opinion from December of 2019. It's a Shepard citation, rather a Lexis citation, 2019 Cal Superior Lexis 6636. Were you aware that the court found that you failed to give a basis for your opinion?
No, sir. I've testified 50 times, and that's the first time I've heard that.
Okay. So I take it that you are also unaware of what the court in excuse me one sec. You testified in a case, Sutton Gate Holdings Limited versus Lacombe Management. Did you testify in that case in New York Supreme Court?
Was that in January, sir?
Well, the opinion came out in May of this year.
I didn't testify in New York in May, no, sir.
Okay. Were you an expert in that case?
I was an expert in a case in New York City, but it wasn't in May.
You haven't heard of Sutton Gate Holdings Limited?
Would you like me to check my record?
No, I'm asking you what you remember. This is something that happened this year, so I just want to know, do you remember being an expert in that case, Sutton Gate Holdings Limited versus LACONM Management NV? Do you have a recollection of that?
The name sounds familiar, sir. I deal with multiple cases throughout every single week that have different names, and all I'm concerned about is with the signature or the handwriting that I'm doing an analysis on.
Okay. So you weren't aware that the court stated and found that based on personal observation of her testimony and on her methodology, the court also rejects the testimony of Iglesias' handwriting expert, Lori Holtzel, as extremely unpersuasive. Were you aware of that?
No, sir.
Were you aware that he referred to your methodology where you were opining on a signature on a loan agreement, that it is as unscientific as it gets?
I have no recollection. No, I have no idea of any of the findings. No, sir. I spoke with the attorney, and he never mentioned anything to me about that.
And so I guess you don't also know that the court found that your opinion smacked of outcome-oriented cherry-picking rather than a desire to create a representative sample.
Again, I don't recall. I don't have any recollection of that. No one informed me of that. No, sir.
Okay. Looking at your CV, I didn't see anything involving elections. Is this your first time out being involved in an elections matter?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by my first time out.
Is this the first time you've served as an expert witness in a case involving elections?
Served as an expert witness, yes, sir.
Have you trained any elections officials?
Yes, sir.
And what did you train them in?
Identification of voter registrations, class characteristics, general handwriting observations is what I trained. It wasn't a very long training. And then I also created a training program for True the Vote.
And True the Vote, that's a right-wing group that attempts to disenfranchise voters?
I have no idea what they do.
Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Wojcik.
I object to the form of that question.
I'll withdraw it, John. One other thing I noticed on your resume, I think you haven't ever written any publications on signature matching or handwriting forensic document examination?
Well, for True to Vote, yes, that was written.
Because I noticed on your resume you have a library and there's several books listed. Does that mean that you read those books?
Yes, they're just part of the library if you need anything for reference.
Okay. But you haven't actually written any books on forensic document examination?
I have not.
And have you written any articles on forensic document examination?
Just the one for True to Vote.
And was that a peer-reviewed article that you wrote for True to Vote?
I did have peers that reviewed it, yes, sir.
You're studying for a PhD. You have an understanding of the term peer-reviewed, do you not, Ms. Holtzel?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was the article that you wrote or the document that you wrote for True to Vote peer-reviewed?
Yes, sir.
Was it published?
From my understanding, yes.
Where was it published?
True to Vote, my understanding is when they contacted me, they hired me to create a training program that was due to be published. I don't know what their system is, and I don't know anything about their program.
And you mentioned that you couldn't make a conclusive determination on 6 of the envelopes that you reviewed on Tuesday. Is that right?
Correct.
You'd agree with me that you did not see any sign of forgery or simulation for any of those 6 signatures. Is that right?
Correct.
And you'd agree with me that you did not see any evidence of forgery or simulation with respect to the other 94 signatures that you examined, correct?
Correct.
And you mentioned that you weren't able to come to a conclusion because you would need additional exemplars in order to definitively determine whether the signature was a match. Is that fair?
Yes.
And that's according to the standard required of a forensic document examiner to reach that kind of a conclusion about it being a matching signature, correct?
Correct.
But that doesn't say anything about whether or not it was appropriate for elections officials to count the votes of those 6 of the 6 voters based on the signatures in front of them, correct?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question?
Yeah. You aren't making any claims about it being inappropriate for the elections officials to have counted those 6 votes that you couldn't make a conclusive determination were a match, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Tsai?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Helpful, were you exclusively looking for a signature match during your review?
No, ma'am.
What else were you looking for?
I was looking to see if the signature on the ballot form fell within the range of variation of the known exemplars.
Okay, so you were looking exclusively at signatures, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You didn't look at any other information on the screen to try to verify the identity of the voter who signed the affidavit. Is that correct?
No, ma'am, that's not correct. I did on many cases, if I needed to, was looking at the numbers because there was a date on the ballot along with any numbers that possibly were on the comparison exemplars.
And what would those numbers tell you?
To see if they were similar between the ones on the ballot versus the ones on the known exemplars, or if they were different.
So you were looking to make sure that you were actually looking at the correct document or the ballot affidavit that was being shown to you, correct?
I'm not quite sure that the correct one. I don't know what you mean by the correct one.
Okay, let me ask you a different question. Did you look at, for example, any information like the phone number listed on the affidavit and compare it to the voter file to determine the identity of the voter who had signed the ballot affidavit?
To determine the identity. So I was giving a subset of known exemplars that had numbers on them. I don't know how I would verify if I don't have a birthday, if I don't have a social security number, so I'm not quite sure what you mean by that.
Well,
I was checking the numbers that were available to me. There was no other information available because it didn't write anything else on the ballot.
Okay. So what I mean by that, and I think you just answered my question, is you were simply looking for handwriting matches, signature matches, but weren't looking at any other information to confirm the identity of the voter. Is that correct?
Well, the name obviously was to confirm the identity, but that didn't have to do with handwriting. But I did review the name after the file and make sure the numbers matched up from whatever the number on the ballot was to the number on the comparison exemplars. The voter registration number, I believe, is the
Do you have any reason to disagree with me if I told you that the county officials aren't looking for a signature match but are trying to confirm the identity of the voter using all the information that's available to them?
I don't know what their process is, ma'am.
Do you have any reason to disagree with the statement that I just made?
No.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Liddy.
Thank you, Your Honor. Counsel, I believe you testified that you've been working in the area of signature examinations since 2004. Is that correct?
I've had experience since, I believe, the mid-'90s, and then I've worked exclusively as a forensic document examiner since 2007.
And has it been your experience that the more work you've done in this area, the more efficient you have become?
Yes, sir.
And with that efficiency, would you agree with me that it would include being faster at making determinations?
Yes, sir.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Redirect, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, just to be clear, Ms. Holt, so your testimony earlier was that the defendant's expert was present there with you in the room, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the defendant's expert actually identified more inconclusive signatures than you did, right?
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, if there was some problem with your methodology of some kind, if anything, it could mean that you should have identified more inconclusive signatures, right?
Yes, sir.
No further questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. The witness is excused. You're going to rest, Mr.
Thank
Wilson?
you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. I took a look at Rule 50, and it confirmed what I understood, which is that there's no Rule 50 motion in a bench trial. It's for jury trials. And so I'm not going to entertain a Rule 50 motion. What I think we should do, and I'm happy to talk about procedural issues, is take the opportunity to recess now. I'm sorry, Mr. Willenchik, go ahead. He's lost his audio. So let's give it a minute and see if it comes back. It's going to come back on. Mr. Willenchik, do you now have a tandem?
I think I've got, I just called in.
Perfect.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
And And so you had held up your hand when your audio went out, so you didn't hear what I was saying. Is that correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay. What I was saying is I'm not going to entertain a Rule 50 motion. It's my reading of the rule that it doesn't apply to bench trials, and I think this case would benefit from a complete record in any event. And so what I'd like to do is to have any procedural discussions we need to now, and then we'll start up with your cases. And if I understand, we may have Baudol, we may have your expert. I understand lawyers talk overnight, and sometimes they change their minds and want more witnesses or less witnesses, and then we're probably going to have Mr. Valenzuela. Did I get that right?
Did you mean the order, Your Honor? I think those were the three names left, but I think our expert would go last.
That's fine. I didn't mean to give that any special order.
Yeah.
All right. And then we'll have closings after that. I suppose Mr. Willencheck can call an additional witness and rebuttal if he wants, but I expect we'll finish up by noon. Let me just talk to you about my schedule tomorrow. I do have a 9 o'clock order to show cause. My preference is to start up at 9:15. If you guys want, I'm happy to start as early as 8:30 and then take a break. But I think it's easier just to start up at 9:15. Anybody want to disagree with that?
No, Your Honor.
That way everybody can have a nice, relaxing evening. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we leave?
Nothing for plaintiff.
Thank you. I know these trials are hard. We all do them in the election season, and usually it's over by now. But I really appreciate all the hard work you guys have put into this. We'll see you tomorrow at this channel at 9:15.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. We're in recess.